Hi folks, hope you're all good. This is the first video I've ever made in a different country to the UK. I am here in Argentina, which is the home of my wife's family, and I'm actually outside, which again I've not made a video outside for I think 5 years. And as I say, I'm in Argentina. That's why you see an air conditioning machine behind me. You don't normally get that in the UK. And well, if I want to give you a quick cheeky tour here, there's a barbecue stove thing, which is typical Argentinian thing to have at home. And I don't know if you can see it there, but there's a dog, which again is a very typical thing to find in Argentina, and you don't get so much of that in the UK. So what I thought I would talk about here is nothing to do with Argentina, I'm afraid, but something that's been on my mind, which is the idea that an idea to do with what a party could, or policies a party could have in the UK. Political party I'm talking about there, of course. I was thinking about this more when I was a member of the Labour Party, like what policies would I recommend the Labour Party to have. I was always hoping when I was a member of the Labour Party, or when I was voting Labour, I was always hoping for them to be more radically left wing or radically pro, like direct democracy or something. But I never really came to a conclusion about what the policies actually should be. But now I've left the Labour Party. Now I'm voting mainly for the Green Party these days. But it's still on my mind. What policy should a party have? And this would apply to any party in the UK, actually, including the Tories and the Lib Dems and the Green Party, and any party really. But I'm just not. I don't have my hopes up that like the Tories are going to adopt this, or even the Labour Party. They're not going to adopt this either. But anyway, it's food for thought. So my core policy that I'm thinking of is to have to replace the House of Lords in the UK with a direct democracy. So there's been talk for years in the UK about replacing the House of Lords because it's mostly appointed chamber now, but I think they've still got some hereditary members. So it's always been a bit politically dodgy. So what I propose is we replace this with what would initially be an advisory body, which would be directly democratic. Now, the sort of direct democracy I advocate is something I call jury rule, and I wouldn't be using that name in this instance because I think it might spook the public and the press especially. So I'm not sure what I'd call it, to be honest, but the idea of the process is that we all get called up once every 30 years in our lives, and we do a 3-month stint as a member of this body. Effectively would be like a member of the House of Lords, pretty much that sort of level of power, every, as I say, 30 years for 3 months. Now the details of those times that don't really matter. The reason I picked those figures is because I think it means roughly 1% of the population are serving at any one time, which seems to me to be the sort of amount we can take in terms of like taking us away from our jobs. So for when you're serving on this thing, I suggest that you don't have to do your normal job. you take like a 3-month sabbatical, and the government basically, or the state, pays you for your work, or pays your employer to pay you, or something like that. Basically, you don't suffer economically for having to do this. And so you would be assigned. I've actually got a website where I've written all this in detail, but to roughly sort of summarize, you'd be assigned initially to a random one of 4 sort of parts of the process of lawmaking and governing. So the 4 parts would be: one would be proposing laws, the second would be whittling laws down, like sort of rating proposals for changes in the law, and the third one will be approving or disapproving of laws, and the fourth part of the process you might be doing for that 3 months would be executive type stuff. So like the sort of thing that sort of emergency decisions that have to be made, the sort of stuff that the Prime Minister does in the UK. And obviously that, when on my website, it's more like this is happening, like replacing the government. But for this proposal, obviously this will be just being like the House of Lords, so it would be running parallel with the actual legislators and executive of the UK. Now, so the trick is with this is if the Labour Party had this as a policy, I think it would be pretty popular, because getting rid of the House of Lords is really popular. So I think pretty much everybody agrees with, or I think the vast majority of people think replacing the House of Lords is a pretty good idea. And since the House of Lords is pretty much an advisory body anyway, I don't think anybody would be too scared of what this body would be or what it would do. And I think you'd be able to push an argument for saying, well, we're creating something that's parallel to the House of Commons, so we might as well make it a bit different. There's not so much point in making it just another elected representative thing with people from representing different regions of the UK or whatever. So I think it's a brilliant opportunity to bring in this something radical. And then after the Labour Party win the election, or whatever party it is, then the stunt that they can pull is to basically do pretty much everything this body proposes that this body wants, basically. That proposes and approves of its own proposals. And that would result in a heck of a lot of radical things happening in the UK. I have faith that the people would bring in a heck of a lot more radical things. I think they would be pretty radically left-wing economically. They might be a bit more dodgy on some social issues, but I think that they would really bring in a radical agenda. And then if it was coming from this process, I think the press and the forces of conservatism, as Tony Blair once called it, would have trouble standing in the way of things that they were getting approved by this body, because this body really is is the people with a little bit of deliberation added. So I think that would be a fantastic. I shouldn't say this publicly really, because the whole idea is to do this by surprise. To do this without spooking the press, but it would be a total Trojan horse job, I reckon. Now, I think in the election, people would expect the Labour Party, say, to have other policies, because otherwise the press would be pretty spooked if we, like, spookily didn't have any other policies apart from this. So I'd suggest a few fairly left-wing sort of things to be sort of believable. One thing like might be rent controls. I think that would be a pretty radical-ish sort of thing. It wouldn't spook the press too much, but would be a pretty cool step forward. Maybe second referendum on the membership of the EU, something to some other reforms. I'm not sure. What do they call them? Comprehensive universities. I think like universities that kind of anyone can go to. Some stuff like that. Would make the world better. Would be steps to the left, but wouldn't be the true radical thing we're trying to do, which is this direct democracy thing. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed the scenery of this video, and hope you enjoyed my proposal there. So, all the best.